Hello, community members, and welcome to Let Me Pick Your Brain. This is a video series for the Genesys WM community where we talk with Genesys experts about the inside outs of workforce engagement management. We uncover benefits for the business and users, and we offer some guidance on how to get the most advantage of your Genesys workforce engagement solution. My name is Natalia Abad. I'm a product marketing manager here at Genesys, one of your Genesys WM community moderators and your host for today. This is our fifth episode. If you haven't seen any, I invite you to check them out. Learn about forecasting, time of management, quality assurance and compliance, and recording. Today, we will be talking with Andy Boland about employee development. Hi, Andy. Welcome to Let Me Pick Your Brain. Can you share a little bit about yourself with us?
Yeah, hi. So as you said, my name's Andy Boland. So I work in product management for agent development, part of workforce engagement management, and I'm based in the UK. More specifically, I look after anything to do with coaching. So that's creating moments to chat to an agent about things, or learning. So literally building learning content to distribute to employees.
Can you share your trajectory?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've worked in Genesys or with Genesys for around 8 years now. I say with Genesys because I came to Genesys a few years back through an acquisition. In total, from a learning, development, and performance management perspective, I'm coming up to around 20 years in the industry, covering loads of different roles. So things like running learning departments, implementing learning technologies like learning management systems, that kind of thing. Consultancy with organizations around learning, development, performance management, professional services, and now product management. So I've held a few different roles across the industry.
To close this section, can you share a fun fact from you?
Okay. So in my spare time, I like to play the drums, I guess. Not in a band or anything like that. Probably more for stress relief. Not necessarily play them well, but yeah, that's probably what I do in my spare time. When I've got spare time, I've got 2 kids, so I don't get too much of that.
Thank you for sharing with us about yourself. Now, I would like to understand agent development. Could you explain it as if you were explaining to your grandma?
So what we're centered on here is helping people perform better in their roles. So helping people do well in their job, learn what they need to do their current job, or perhaps move on to a new job if they wanted to. So finding gaps in knowledge and capability and then filling those gaps with learning. And then from a coaching perspective, ultimately creating moments so that managers and employees can get together to talk about challenges that they might have. So perhaps performance gaps that they've got, maybe they've done something really well that they want to speak about, and coaching allows us to build those or create those moments in which that can take place. From a company perspective, it's a really important but perhaps often forgotten part of workforce engagement management. I think a lot of organizations quite rightly spend a lot of time looking at quality monitoring, speech and text analytics, those kinds of things to find challenges or to find the problems within a workforce. Here, from a coaching and learning perspective, we're talking about fixing those things. So giving people some learning if they're underperforming, sitting down and chatting with people to help them get better at their job. Yeah, so that's probably it in a nutshell. Granny's probably asleep by now, so my apologies.
Now that we have gone through your grandma explanation, we are going to a lightning round, a fire of several questions about agent development. So, are we ready to start?
Sure.
The first question is, could you tell us more about Genesys Cloud CX capabilities for agent development?
Yeah, sure. So a couple of different capabilities in here. So first, we've got coaching. So as I said, what we're talking about here is organizing a coaching session between a facilitator and an attendee. And there's a couple of different ways in which you can get into that. So it might be started on the back of an interaction. So maybe a manager's listening to an interaction or is doing some quality monitoring, and they want to get together with the agent to talk about challenges or good things. So that would be one of the options. Alternatively, they might be in analytics looking at performance metrics, so after call work or something similar to that. Again, they can start a coaching session from there if they want to. In that particular instance, they don't necessarily need to attach an interaction, but they can. So in that instance, coaching is about everything and can be about everything. Secondly, from a learning perspective, we're literally talking about building and distributing learning content. So like you might get in another system where you want to impart some knowledge to people, share a new product or a new soft skill, learning is the place where you can do that. So you can build learning content inside Genesys Cloud for whatever you would like, and then distribute that to employees across the organization. From a learning perspective, we've also got assessment in there as well. So if after you've given somebody some knowledge or some information, you want to check their understanding, there's assessment capabilities in there to see if they can pass a test or not.
How does these capabilities help supervisors to empower agents?
Good question. So I guess we're literally talking here about closing performance gaps, right? We're talking about identifying challenges that an employee might have in their role and the tools that you can use to fill that gap. And it's got a direct link there to empowering those employees to do better in their role or perform better. I guess the thing is, nobody likes to come to work and not know what they're doing. No one likes to come to work and underperform. It's not a nice feeling to know that you're underperforming, but not know that you can do anything about it. And so learning and coaching gives us the avenue in which to fill those gaps for employees so that they can feel confident in their role, comfortable in their role, and then people like coming to work, right? If you know what you're doing and you're performing well, then that's a good work day for you. So I would say we've got a direct impact on empowering people to control their own capabilities, manage their own capabilities, and be in charge of, their job, their role, and their prospects, I guess.
Does these capabilities require any type of setup?
No, not really. There might be some permissions that are needed, depending on how you use roles. If you're using default roles, they should be fine. Those permissions are added, for instance, in supervisor and employee automatically, so they should have the capabilities already. Some of these capabilities are more modern, have come about more recently, so it may be an idea to go and backfill some of those roles in roles and permissions, just to make sure that they've got the permissions there. But for any more recent accounts, supervisor, agent, and so forth should have those permissions. If you create your own roles, so if you make bespoke roles, then all of the permissions are listed in the resource center. So that would be the place to go to find out what permissions you should have. From a learning perspective, similar kind of thing. The only other thing I would say is that obviously any learning best practices would be relevant when building those learning courses as well. But obviously for any organizations that do learning now, which is basically any organization, ultimately those best practices that you put into building modules as you do now.
Are there templates or existing modules that coaches and managers can use?
Absolutely. So we've got Beyond modules built into the system. So like 5 different Beyond modules. Now that content's specifically how to use Genesys Cloud as well. So really useful from an onboarding perspective. So if you've got new employees coming into the business, they're going to start using Genesys Cloud. There are modules in there about how to take an interaction, that kind of thing. So they're preloaded for anybody that's got access to learning. So you can literally distribute them to everybody as soon as you fire up the system.
And could you give us a quick rundown of learning modules and NJ Home?
Yeah, absolutely. Let me just share my screen. So essentially what we're talking about here from a learning point of view is building learning content, things that you want people to learn, and then distributing that across an organization. And from a learner perspective, certainly from an agent point of view, this agent activity screen is probably the best place to come to find out what learning you've got to do. So within this screen, if you look in the bottom right-hand corner here, I can see what modules have been assigned to me. So in here, I can see what things are due this week, what things are going to be due in the future, and things that I've recently closed as well. And from here, I can go ahead and launch that learning directly. So if I wanted to, for instance, go into this Beyond course, I can click it here, that would launch in a new window, and I'd be able to go on and continue doing that Beyond course or start it for the first time. But also content that's been built by the organization and assigned is accessible there as well. Building that content is super easy. We won't go into huge amounts of detail there, but ultimately inside the system, we've got the ability in development and feedback to see modules that have already been created, and I can go ahead and create different types of modules. I could build a learning module, so that's just me passing on some knowledge, some information. I can do learning with assessment, so I can pass on that knowledge, but also assess understanding at the end of it. And then lastly, I can just build a module which is an assessment. So if we want to find out if a person understands a certain subject, we can do that from there. And as we said, we can distribute those to people across the organization. Also, from a coaching point of view, we've got coaching capabilities in the system. And as we've said already, coaching is the ability to create moments, probably centered around a challenge or an opportunity that an employee's got. So that might be an interaction that we want to talk about, or something similar, perhaps behavior that we want to have a sit down and a chat about. Again, in this agent activity screen, I've got access to any coaching appointments that are coming up. So I can see this test coaching session here, and I can see it's got attachments on there. So an interaction I can listen to, a video I can watch, and so forth. So that's my best way to jump into them, and that would ultimately open up in a new model where I'd have access to the interaction, be able to view the documents, and I can also add any notes in there as well. So if I want to pop some notes in, if I want to have a conversation backwards and forwards between a facilitator and an attendee, I can do that in here. A couple of different ways in which we can get to both of these capabilities. So from a coaching perspective, if I go into analytics and go into an interaction, what I've got at the interaction level is a coaching button. So let's say if I'm a manager and I just happen to be listening to this interaction, or I'm an evaluator and I'm doing some quality monitoring, then it may be the case that I want to have a conversation with the employee on the back of this interaction. So I've got the coaching button here. If I click on this coaching button, it'll basically take me into a model where I can set up that coaching session. So what's it going to be called? Who's going to be in that session? And then depending on if you've got workforce management in use or not, you can schedule that at the optimum time. Alternatively, and just in analytics generally, we've got the ability to assign learning and also do coaching directly from there as well. So if I was in my development, let's say, and we were down at the user level, I've got the ability to start coaching here. That would launch the same model, but I can choose to attach interactions or documents to that, so it might not be centered around an interaction. And I can also assign learning from here as well. So if I click here, I can see any courses that are available to be assigned, and I can ultimately assign those modules to an employee if that's going to fill a gap that I've identified. So yeah, so that hopefully covers off a really brief look at both learning and coaching within agent activity and Genesys Cloud.
If there was one thing you want to say to our customers, what would it be?
It would be, I guess, around using coaching with quality management. As you can imagine, there are literally thousands of customers that do quality management, quality monitoring on a regular basis. And coaching should be a central part of that. Likely for organizations that are doing quality monitoring, the manager is sitting down with that employee and talking about what's happened on a call, what's good on an interaction, that kind of thing. And they might be recording that externally. They might be using an Excel spreadsheet or something like that. But Genesys Cloud literally has the coaching capability built in for that very need. So you're going to do quality monitoring. and you want to have a chat with an employee about it, to talk about what was good and bad, then coaching's available for you to use. And so I guess just that those two things should ideally go hand in hand, because the coaching button's right there when you're doing quality inside an interaction.
Who are these capabilities available for?
So coaching and learning is available for any customers on GT3 or with the WEM add-on.
Anything else we should be excited in the future?
Yeah, a couple of things changing in the platform. So coming relatively soon, we've got some user experience changes for coaching. So some new screens, probably bringing it more in line with the agent activity screen. So a new, fresh look to the coaching capability. Got a similar thing coming up from a learning perspective. So what's planned is, for instance, adding cover art to modules to make them more engaging. And then a new way of assigning content as well, probably to make it a bit more like a catalog for managers to browse through. So those things are in design at the moment. And then probably one of the next big things is going to be learning with workforce management. So with coaching at the moment, where it integrates with workforce management, you can schedule those coaching sessions at the most optimum time. And essentially, we're going to be doing the same thing for learning. So if you're choosing to assign a module to an employee, you can then find the best time for that module to take place and then schedule it directly into workforce management. So that's in design as well at the moment, and hopefully coming out this year.
If members want to learn more about it, where can they find information?
So always the Resource Center. It's a great place to find out literally anything you need about Genesys Cloud. Like I said earlier, all of the permissions in there, all of the functionalities available in there. So that's a great place to go to. Beyond that, I would say Genesys generally, right? You can reach out to most people from a Genesys perspective and ask a question and get a good response, or be directed to someone that can give you an answer. So yeah, either of those.
And where members can find you?
Yeah, probably the community is going to be the best place to go to. Basically, the whole of Genesys, and particularly the product management team, keep a close eye on the community. So if you're asking any questions, have got any feedback on a capability, anything like that, then the product management team are invariably looking at that community to find out what people are talking about, and will certainly reply to posts and such like on that community if there's feedback, if there's ideas, that kind of thing. Community is a great place to go to. Also, the ideas portal is a really useful one. From a product management team, we ultimately what we're looking to do is build the system to meet the needs of customers. So getting ideas from customers about what the capabilities could and should do, use cases that you'd like to be achieved through using the capabilities is invaluable. And we try to get into the detail as much as we can on those ideas. So if you put an idea forward, particularly through the ideas portal, it's highly likely that we'll come back and ask some additional questions about that use case just to get some clarity. And certainly that could factor into a future capability built into the system.
Thank you, Andy, for sharing with us. And let us learn a little bit more about agent development. For all our customers, I invite you to join us in the WM Genesys community and leave your comments to learn more about other workforce engagement subjects. If you're already following us, see you in the next installment.